Hey everyone, it's Will, Gamer Dad, with another video for you. So in today's video, we're finally going to review Wenefica as a 5-star Stellar Awakened. And of course, as usual, I'll do a little bit of gameplay and let you know what I think about her. But the most important question of all is
she hot or not?
Honestly, she's not that hot. I already deal with a witch at home, so two's too much for me. Anyways, our newest Shade Zone setter has a VC, parties Shade type attack plus 50% for 1 turn, and restore 20% MP. One major thing to note is that she can't really set Shade Zone on demand, unlike Efi, and so of course I'll have some demonstrations showcasing that both of them are best used together, kind of similar to the Villette and Orleas of the world. I do have the Stellar Burst Boost active, and I will show you that upgrade in just a little bit. I did film that ahead of time as well. Note that when you unlock all those abilities, you will have enhanced or awakened Shade type stance deployed. And with all the abilities from her 16 Shadow, mind you, we don't have to use 30 or more Shadow to do that. If you have 2 Shade allies in the front, you get normal Shade Zone. With 4, you get Awakened Shade Zone right off the bat. And because we have the Stellar Awakened ability, at battle start in the front line, inflict 3 curses except Death Curse on all enemies. So she actually has 3 different curses. Each of them do different things and can stack at end of turn. If you want them to stack earlier, you'll have to use the appropriate move to apply more of those curses. And of course, so on and so forth. Alright, so let's go over her abilities, and there's a lot of them. This video actually took me a number of hours to kind of experiment with and just kind of read everything that Wenefica does. I find that the newer units are definitely very, very complicated in the movesets and how they interact. So first of all, her main DPS move is a 5-star move, Love Cursed Crow, Shade type Pierce attack AoE XL times 3. Type res down 50 for 3 turns maximum stack times 3. Now, the great thing about this is because it is a type res down and not a shade res down, she actually will be beneficial to all sorts of teams, whether or not you stick her in a Pierce team, more on that later, or maybe just subbing her in other ways just to get that extra type res down. It also does definitely benefit Shade teams. I mean, you already have Shade res down, but anyways, you don't necessarily need the RCFs of the world now that you have that. Now, some of her other moves I didn't really find that useful because with the Stellar Awakened ability, it already has the ability to apply the curse. That being said, Rot Bell, Water type Pierced AoE small, and can stack this 1 Rot Curse, which basically inflicts poison and pain. And this is a different poison and pain symbol than the normal ones that you see, that kind of dark purple square. This is going to be an orb, and so it cannot be dispelled away to my understanding, unless the enemy dies, and again, more on that later. And it also inflicts a bunch of different statuses on the enemies with Rot Curse stacks. When you have Grudge, and Grudge is basically the mechanic by which you get 20 at the end of every turn, and at 50 plus, a lot of her moves get a lot more powerful. Also, her Stellar Awakening move does allow you to reawaken zone and apply 50 stacks right off the bat. And just like the amped version of Villette, this number corresponds to an extra 1% of shade damage up to a total of 99 stacks, if you can get that far. Again, these are turn-based for the most part, so you're not going to get it on turn 1 based on number of hits. Now, the Flensing Bell is another one that's one of those curse-applying ones. Turn end, you'll get a Shade Pierce attack, medium strength, and the strength is increased based on the number of Grudge stacks. When you can have, obviously, up to 50 plus, you're going to get more attacks plus more damage overall. Again, really hard to rely on this as a main DPS. If you have a longer battle where you can build up these stacks, and again, 20 per turn, so at least 3 turns to really get going, it's going to be a lot harder to get those end of turn stacks. Also, she does have some defense here. All party members gain 60% damage if user attacks after target, so kind of like that Eagle Eyes boost. But the nice thing is she actually does have type res up 50 for 3 turns. And if you happen to have grudge plus 50, you get to remove all debuffs from all party members. So almost like a healer all in one. I mean, after all, she is a witch. She has some DPS, she has some support, she has some defensive capability, and some healing. Okay, and finally, another move that applies the third and final curse other than the super curse, which I'll show you later. This one attacks and applies a wither curse, and at turn end when Wenefica is in frontline, stack 1 additional. You can get up to 5 stacks for a total of 25%, and these are stat decreases. It's not a debuff per se, and this will stack on top of debuffs such as 30-30 and so on and so forth. More demonstrations on that a little bit later as well. Now you can see why this video took a long time to produce. And when you have 50 grudges, stack an additional wither curse at end of turn instead. Note that if you do the move during an AF or whatnot, you'll actually stack those curses at the same time by each hit, as opposed to waiting until end of turn and having 1 or 2 stacks depending on how many grudges you have active. Now I find this Anathema a fairly useful buff for your own team. Depends on how you want to really spec out Wenefica. She, unfortunately, just like most Stellar Awakened units, does suffer from 4 moves syndrome, because the problem is that you're probably going to have the Stellar move as one of the 4 slots, and in which case you only really have 2 moves, and so they really do encourage the 80 not only to unlock the entire Stellar board, but also to have 4 moves such that you can have 3 normal moves plus their Stellar Awakened move. This one gives a boost such as max MP up 10%. In exchange, you get HP down 10%, and these are a stack. So again, these are not buffs or debuffs. It's almost like a red orb. You can actually get up to 5 stacks down and up. However, you do get to restore from this as well. And this move actually does heal HP as well. So if you're running low on HP or MP, you do have a regenerator or healer in that sense. Same thing, you'll have an extra stack at the end of turn when you have 50 grudges or more. And finally, her main stellar move, it preemptively activates curses on all enemies. So for every curse that you have there, it'll basically do the damage. So those end of turn effects will now be current move right away. And also it activates on your party members. So for example, that life drain curse, it'll add an extra stack and give you that benefit, or heals you at the same time. And during this one move, your damage from the Flensing Curse, again, reminder that the Flensing Curse is the end of turn attack, will be boosted in the base damage. Now, the interesting part is when you do the Stellar Burst. It'll inflict 1 death curse on all enemies, unique to the Stellar move. You cannot get this any other way. So unfortunately, if you only hit the 4.5 and side grade to the 5 stars, you will not have this for a few months yet. This death curse is probably one of her biggest strengths. At turn end, when she's in the front line, you do consume that death curse and inflicts equal damage to target as all damage taken that turn, to a maximum of 1 billion, essentially, all 9s. And note that that's the same amount of damage that you can cause from a AF. So you know that's essentially an entire bar of some HP boss, or in the case of weaker HP boss, I mean, you probably won already. So it's very, very powerful. This is fixed damage, by the way. It pierces barriers, to my understanding, because fixed damage does pierce barriers, and it is not type sensitive. So for example, if you're in a different zone or something happens, this will still take effect as long as you've done enough damage before this activates. And again, this is an end turn after maybe an HP stopper where the boss activates their own kind of counters and so on and so forth. So when it does counter, you still activate last. So you will not only do the 99999 if you can get that far. You'll also dispel their zone. So very common with these Stellar Awakened units, they can break zone and redeploy Awakened, Shade Zone, and stack 50 grudges. So again, in her Stellar mode and burst is only time she can set zone. She can't even VC in a zone, and so she relies on other people to set zone for her. Now in terms of board, we do have the 5-star moves here. These do require quests to do, so make sure if you do end up having a unit, you do have to go through the quests. She doesn't have too many personalities to share, although she does have the Avenger one, and Shade, Bow, Water, so on and so forth. And finally, the standard grass does set up right there. Alright, so let's take her out for a spin. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me this way. Alright, so whenever you do an awakening, just to clarify, you're going to go with the 4 diagonals only, especially if you only have a 16 light or shadow unit. And the best way to unlock the full abilities while limiting your exposure or limiting your resources required is just to go with the 4 corners and buy basically the 3 different hexagons appropriately to the ability and ability plus. So each of them have 3 abilities and 1 stellar skill, and you want to make sure you have all of those done. That will take exactly 20 SP, which is those special ability points, and that corresponds to a 16 light or shadow unit, which you should have from a pickup bonus if you actually summoned on the banner, or if you happen to have a 16 and then use 3 awakening, those all cosmos star charts on it. Alright, so in our first example, of course, we're going to take on some mob. The funny thing is that her end of turn attacks is going to be more than capable of taking it down. I mean, these are really weak mobs at this point, and of course we do have the support of Kumos. Remember that Kumos does gain extra charges when Yakumo is in the front line or when there's Shade Zone, from my understanding. And so, not that you're ever going to use Yakumo without Kumos, or vice versa. However, that is an option if you really want to do so. Also, because we only have Wenefica in the front line by herself, she did not awaken or set any zone. You need at least 2+ members who are shade moves in order to do that. And so in the case, our free unit, Kiro, is more than capable of doing so, in which case we do get a normal zone. The 0 there is the number. If you do it at the end of turn, you'll get 20 additional stacks like that. And that corresponds to the end of turn attack, by the way. That will give your attacks 20% more shade damage. It looks like pain and poison should count, because the damage for 1 hit is hundreds of millions, and it shouldn't be, is my feel. So in this next clip, you heard me commenting in the background. I'm actually testing this with my friend, and so you can hear some unedited commentary as I was play testing this fight. Remember that because you have pain and poison curses, that should allow your pain and poison grasses to be effective as well. However, check it out. What happens at the end will be a little bit surprised, so I'll let you listen into my commentary. Did it even apply anything? Oh, it actually doesn't work! Enrique, when it dies, it actually truly dies. It doesn't get a curse. That's stupid! No! Well, hopefully you enjoyed that little tidbit and obviously learned something about the mechanics of the death curse. Now, in our next example, we can show you what happens when they have an HP stopper. This is how you would normally probably best use Wenefica. I mean, there's lots of ways to kind of punish the enemy, but against most enemies who are neutral or weak to shade, you're going to have a great time. With a full 4 team up front of all shade unit, you have an awakened shade zone. Again, note that you start with only 0 stacks and you only get 20 at the end of every turn, but you're going to do a ton of damage, and all of the units really synergize against each other. In this case, we are only showing more of the offensive capabilities of Wenefica as opposed to some of her defensive ones, which will be later on in the video. You already have Yakumo, ES Tsukiha, really boosting everything and allowing you to do tons of damage. Not to mention, those are top level DPS on its own right in terms of Yakumo. You have Ify allowing you to survive no matter what. And remember that if zone gets broken or dispelled, you can still set zone with Ify herself. Not to mention the Blood Contract and Lunatic Risk Taker, which allows everyone to do a lot more damage in exchange for 20% self-hurting. And of course, after the at the end of turn, after they acted with the HP stopper, we just acted with our death curse. Since we did all 9s with our AF, we also did all 9s to the enemy. So most enemies won't have a billion damage, especially the earlier bosses. So obviously these are simple bosses to clear. There are probably a lot more Japanese videos of more advanced clears with newer bosses, but this is just kind of a taste of the potential of Wenefica. I mean, Wenefica has really only been out, even in Japan, for a few weeks, and of course in global only for 48 hours or so. So this is just my initial testing. If you have any cool comments or maybe some suggestions how I can use her better, yeah, feel free to let me know. I'm always up to learning, how to play the game better. To be honest, this is my first time playing ES Tsukiha as well, so it's almost like a 2-in-1 video. Of course, I'm not going to be doing a 5-star review of ES Tsukiha, but note that she does have capped boost. She helps shadow units. She has some shade DPS, but mainly she is a prayer person that can help boost your team, help shield herself, and so on and so forth, helps heal, kickback immunity, and so on and so forth. Again, the enemy can act, the enemy can debuff you. That won't affect your fixed damage. It is fixed damage for a reason, and that is very, very nice to depend on, especially against some bosses that you may have not been able to beat otherwise, especially if after the AF, the boss dispels your buffs and debuffs, and you have to build those all over again. So those are pretty simple, right? Now, the Vault Alma is a little bit more difficult. I mean, back when it first came out, I had a huge difficulty in beating it. Over time, of course, we have been able to clear it in a multitude of different ways. But in this way, though, we want to show you the barrier pierce, the capability of fixed damage, and the fact that we can bypass Alma's tactics. Because remember, for those who fought Alma, Phase 1 is weak to any element. And then Phase 2, whatever elements you used in Phase 1 are null and absorbed, so to speak. And finally, after you get through the second phase, or the second HP stopper, you can go back to using the same element that you used in the first phase. So basically, 1 in 3, you can use the same element. Phase 2, you have to switch elements altogether. And so most teams back then had to use a hybrid team that had dual elements, or you equipped Earth Grasta to kind of do all Earth damage to start, or neutral damage, and so on and so forth. A lot of screwing around in order to really survive the boss. Not to mention, at each HP stopper, the bosses remove your buffs and debuffs, and that's extremely annoying. Not to mention having a 5-hit shield at all times, making it difficult to do damage. And if you don't hit it 5 times, then it starts doing silly things to you that hurt you for the most part. But you know what? F you. We can beat you very, very easily. So with the first HP stopper out of the way, we did all shade damage. No big deal, right? Eat that, all 9s. So right away, we bypassed the second phase, and we're back into the third and final portion of the HP bar. We have Efi, like I said, helping your shade team survive. Not to mention, you can have prayers available from ES Tsukiha, cap boost, which we'll see in the very final hit. And then Yakumo can do the massive damage on his own. So Abyssal Prowess will be boosting, and pretty much that is all you need. So we have boost, delete, 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 delete. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. If you happen to have Wenefica act first, I believe she actually applies not only type res down, she can apply some breaks as well, which is quite useful. And there's the team. I use the same setup for everybody, by the way. Actually, it's not Wenefica that applies break. It was ES Tsukiha as her DPS move. Sorry for that confusion there. I'm still learning all the units, and it is quite challenging in that sense. I don't know if you guys find that, but with a large roster, it does get really difficult to kind of keep up with all the different units out there. A lot of times, these 5-star reviews are the only time I get to experiment with the unit because, like, honestly, everyone has, limited time, and it's hard to kind of remember everything. Everyone just kind of has their fan favorites and uses those same teams. Okay, in our next example, remember Myris? Her true manifest was a doozy, very, very difficult to overcome. Obviously, you need an ultra powerful win team, and you have to also survive too, right? Now, I know that I'm using Sesta, and I could beat it already with Sesta, but this is a clean 3-turn kill. And I want to show an alternate way of using Wenefica. Now, remember that Wenefica is not a win unit, so you can't start her up front to help with Sesta's Awakened Wind Zone. So, why don't we start with someone else up front and then move Wenefica up front? Now, in exchange, you don't get the 3 curses at the beginning since she wasn't in the front line to start. So there is a downside to that. However, if you're not relying on her for those curses, and you have, in this case, a Pain and Poison setter with the likes of S.A. Suzette, then you really don't have to worry. Not to mention, of course, even if you don't have an SA1, you can apply Demonic Thrust and so on and so forth. Now, remember that in the second phase here in this fight, you have to kill Varus, because otherwise Varus starts giving a shield to Myris, and if you kill Myris first, like in this case, it'll actually counter you with a massive DPS. So what we're going to do is we're going to slaughter Varus and Myris at the same time. Of course, with the SA units, we're going to have an easy time, and we're just going to activate ASOR's critical guard, hoping that we don't die. Again, note that we're doing all 9s, and we have applied that death curse to both Myris as well as Varus. Tetra attacks at end of turn. And then Terra Fortress, which remember, we debuffed in the beginning of the fight 9s across the board. We killed off Varus. It worked on Myris's 1/2 HP because it had an extra HP stopper, so we didn't end up killing it in 2 turns. However, you just press Twin Blade Wolf and it finishes the fight for you for the most part. So it makes it a lot easier instead of having to worry about RNG and whatnot. Having those extra 999s essentially allows you 1 guaranteed HP stopper bypassed or finished off if the boss only has 1. And so standard move would be 1 turn AF, 50% HP stopper, death curse kill, and then you're done. So for any fights up to the last few years in the beginning, you could easily clear those. The ones that have 3 or 4 HP stoppers, of course, are going to be a lot more difficult, but hopefully you learn a few tactics, tips, and tricks while watching this video to kind of maximize her use. As of this video, I'm still learning myself, so, you know, I'm looking forward to even trying more cool things with Wenefica. I do think she has a ton of potential, both as a support as well as a DPS. Alright, so in our final example, we actually have 2 clips of the Warped Ancestor Gaishin, which is obviously part of the Apocrypha. This first clip was not a finished boss. What I want to show is the difference when we actually apply all those Wither curses as well as Type Shields. She does have, remember, that Type Shield move, which I don't know how to pronounce, as well as giving us that Eagle Eyes buff, but more importantly, she has the Withering Curse if you use her Withering move. In this case, the first example, we're only going to get Type Shield up, and then we're going to just spam her main DPS move. Remember that the Wither, which you can see has a down arrows in the purple orb of 1, it only gets an extra stack at the end of turn. So you only have 1 stack right now, and at each AP stopper, this boss will counter you with an attack on your on your body. So let's just take a look at how much damage you're taking. A few hundred, nothing too serious. Remember, we have dual debuffs from 40-40 now from SA Suzette, as well as a 25 power down from ES Suzette. So ES Tsukiha. And then of course the end of turn attack from one of the other curses. Now that wasn't really an issue. What I really want to show you is what the difference in defensive capabilities are when you apply 5 Withering Curses using that Withering move. Again, that move is going to be low DPS, and so if you only have a 3 slotted Wenefica like myself, you are sacrificing DPS for more debuffs, and like I said, they do stack with the dual power int debuff without having diminishing return. So that is a very big benefit. We are using the Wither Bell to apply up to 5 stacks, so you can see at each hit you get 1 extra. Remember, we're not in Shade Zone, so we don't get extras from Shade Zone or anything like that, or the Grudge plus 50. We don't have any grudges here because we are using an enhanced Pierce Zone. Watch the counter. The damage 0, 0, 0, and then obviously just a few hundred on AS Yukino. So you can really see that if you really need the extra shielding, as much as you can say, oh, what's 25% stat decrease on the enemy? Hey, fairly significant even against super bosses such as this. So something to keep in mind if you really need that. You can experiment with that and of course use that Type Shield, which does give that Eagle Eyes buff for you. Since the enemy active first, we do get that actually Eagle Eyes buff. You see the eyes kind of thing on the enemy, which on us, which is the kind of the eyes, that tiger eye kind of thing. And then we can just finish it off at the end of turn. We don't have to do anything. Remember, we already cast the SA move that combined both Suzette as well as Wenefica. Suzette already wrecked the game. And note that Suzette dispelled the Pierce Zone. And then the 999s finished it off after that, because Suzette's move did over 1 billion anyways. And so, we didn't have to do anything. You even have time to put up a shield from ES Tsukiha, and that will reduce anything 5,000 or less to 0. And I know she's a little bit older unit, but these are the kind of things that we like to try out, and you never know when you use these units again, or if they get a manifest, or just, hey, that happens to be the right unit at the right time for the right team. Wenefica, being a Pierce unit, can be put in a Pierce team or like swatted in when you need that the extra 999, because she does work in any zone because it's fixed damage, as long as you can get a Stellar Gauge fully charged. And that's pretty much it. So there's this loadout. We didn't even need Sora because, we have no damage really coming our way. Alright, so in conclusion, Wenefica is a very versatile unit, has a lot of potential. I'm not sure how to best use her so far, but the 9s are very attractive, and fixed damage is fixed damage. The boss used to scam us with those damages, and now we can counter back with fixed 9s across the board. Anyways, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.